Sometimes the biggest red flag is not what your toxic boss does, but what they repeatedly say to you and how they communicate with you. Communication is just such a big tool that we can use to dissect what is going on exactly and then go from there and make and plan the next steps from there. Because the subtle undermining, the tone, the manipulation, the rewriting of history, the comments that have you spiraling for hours, there are big red flags that we need to take into consideration and not just dismiss. So in today's episode, we're gonna break down 6 of the most common communication red flags that show you are actually dealing with a toxic manager and what a healthy manager would say instead. Hi, my name is Fela Rosa. Welcome to the Corporate Warriors podcast. If this episode is helpful, make sure to like and subscribe and forward the episode to somebody that needs to hear this. Now let's go. Red flag number 1. You are too sensitive. Haven't we all heard that at some point? Now, why is that a red flag in communication? And it can be any kind of word, like you're too emotional, you're too sensitive, like all of these things. It's an absolute red flag because in the best case, it's just dismissing an emotional reality without actually going to the real issue underneath. It's a statement about how you feel and who you are as a person, and probably just based on one conversation or one disagreement that you might have had. This is not professional because who are they to tell you who you are as a person? Are you really too sensitive? I don't know. It's an absolute statement to something that is situation based. So in some way, it's manipulating your own self-perception, right? Because if you hear that long enough, you might walk away and think you're too sensitive. And it might not even be the case. Perhaps you were right on point with the observation that you had. So basically, the easiest way to say this is bad leadership really does this finite statements about you, who you are as a person and a professional, like you're overreacting, you're taking everything personal, right? You're too emotional. I mean, that's not helpful. Even let's say you were too emotional about something. What does that solve? So healthy leadership would need to understand what is going on at the root cause. And then if over time patterns repeat, they can be pointed out, but they need to point it out with examples, right? So that people understand, okay, there's an actual pattern, so we need to talk about it. And then still the result, it's not just about saying, oh, you're to this, you're to that. Stop being yourself, but it's understanding like, why is that and what can we do about that? Or why is that actually counterproductive for the company, for the project? And then what can we do about it? It needs to be enabling and empowering in and of itself. I don't say you shouldn't get negative feedback, like, or challenging feedback. Look, I'm German, right? I mean, challenging feedback is something that you grow up with. And I understand that it can sometimes be hurtful, even for Germans. Like, we play it cool, but it's also hurting our little hearts sometimes. But the reality is this. It's not about you saying all challenging feedback is negative. The question is it really enabling you to grow? Is it empowering you that you understand where did you drift off? Perhaps did you answer too emotional and how could you have answered instead? So a healthy leader would ask, let's clarify what has happened here or give you clear ideas of how you could have reacted instead to solve the problem underneath. Look, emotions are just a result of something going on underneath, and the emotions are just guiding us. So instead of shaming people in general for their emotions, let's understand what's going on so that we can work with the core of it all, that you and you understand each other's perspectives. In healthy leadership, that would be the case. And then you move on from there. You make sure that you have the common goal is like project success, for instance, and how can you move there? And then ideally, your leader has more experience and can be kind of a mentor in those situations for you as well and guide you so that you learn how to actually do things better instead of just being shamed for a reaction that you might have had. Red flag number 2 is a really bad one in my opinion. It's when your manager says, if you can't handle this pressure, maybe this role isn't for you, or maybe you're not cut out for this kind of work. And look, it's the same here. We need to use our full discernment when we go into the analysis of those communication techniques, right? Because high pressure environments exist. And there's a lot going on here. But using the pressure as a form of humiliation or intimidation or emotional control is quite the opposite of leadership. That is manipulation. If you go towards fear-based performance and your manager is pushing you there instead of really sustainable success, that is a problem. You don't want to have a manager that can only motivate you by saying, if you don't do this, you're not cut out for this. If you don't do that, you're not cut out for that. That is fear-based. That is really off. Instead, you should figure out with a manager in a healthy way, like what kind of skills do you bring to the table to make that a success? And if you're lacking skills, how can we fill the gap? Perhaps you need support because actually you are completely overloaded and it's not a skill issue. It's just there are too many things, perhaps a prioritization issue, right? So instead of attacking the person, we need to attack the problem at hand and Just like in the book, Getting to Yes, we need to separate the people from the problem first, find a solution, and make sure that we have the right people in place. But listen, this is exactly what your manager's job is. So beware. This is their job to do, right? So if they don't take care of it and handle that responsibly, it's actually them that are not really cut out for their role. Now, can you say that? Can you go to HR? No, probably not. Might be very risky, but it's for you, this signal, this absolute red flag. Red flag number 3. Oh God, this is also a good one. Nobody else has a problem with me. Yikes. Look again, also this, it doesn't help you. It doesn't solve the problem. This is isolating you and making you question yourself. Am I too stupid? Am I not able to do this? What's wrong with me? Right? So you're internalizing their bad leadership. Congratulations, you walked into the trap. Now you think you're the problem when your leader is doing a bad job. So how do we, separate bad leadership, good leadership? First, bad leadership, they compare employees constantly against each other, in front of each other, or they saying, oh, but this person did like that. They don't think I'm doing something wrong, blah, blah, blah. And they use like kind of this group dynamic and group pressure to silence any kind of feedback or concerns. Right? This is a big, big red flag. And is, in my opinion, also why very often, if they're in toxic workplaces, they also lean towards unethical behaviors because the lines are already crossed and people are already trained to not speak up and not say anything. So in a healthy environment, it might still be that your boss doesn't want to receive constantly negative feedback from you. I mean, I get it, right? That would not be healthy either. However, if an important concern is brought up, instead is deflecting it, and if instead of saying other people don't care, it would be important to say, I appreciate you bringing that up. Well, interesting perspective. I haven't thought about it that way. And then digging in and again, separating the people from the problem and going in and finding solutions. And if it really doesn't resonate, a good manager might really try to understand, okay, can you help me understand what specifically felt wrong or felt off and why? And then you can look deeper together. Red flag number 4, I have never said that. That is a big red flag. Now, I want to be sure that also here, like discernment, okay? Perhaps you did remember something wrong. It happens to all of us, right? So if it just happens once and afterwards it seems to be okay again, perhaps it's not yet a red flag because everybody forgets something at some point. It's part of the game. It's part of being human, right? You got a ton of stuff on your plate. It might have happened on both sides. Also, I want to mention, right? It might happen on your side or on your manager's side. One misunderstanding, one that didn't happen is not equal to gaslighting. It's a very different setup. So how do we separate good and healthy from toxic leadership? Toxic leadership really doesn't want to have anything in writing, is constantly rewriting history. So it's not a once in a lifetime occurrence, but it's constantly happening. The things get discussed and afterwards it gets shifted. And that a lot of expectations and goals are changed verbally without any kind of accountability or written communication. This is probably the biggest red flag. And what does healthy leadership do? Healthy leadership actually wants to have stuff written down, especially changes in goalposts and changes in processes and priorities, because it also helps them, right, to verify. Let's say, somebody does mess up, which it does happen and it's totally normal, but then you can go back into the email, double check and be like, oh, okay, I'm sorry, apologizing. Let's move forward now. We all know what's going on, right? And perhaps if something has only happened in verbal communication, a healthy leader might say, oh, okay, I remember that differently. Let's review it. Let's go into it. But then also follow up with a written communication. That is so crucial. Red flag number 5. You should be grateful to even be here. Why is that a red flag? It's because healthy leadership would never make you feel replaceable all the time, right? It's again this fear-based narrative. It's kind of, I am here and you're here, and if you're not happy, a million other people would be happy to be at your place, which is questionable really if it's a toxic leader. So a bad leader usually uses like fear, guilt, shame, superiority to maintain in their power, while a good leader, a healthy leader, would also show their appreciation for their work, value what you bring to the table, value your feedback from time to time, and ideally help you grow as a professional within your role or even for your next step in your career. Now, that is not an easy thing. Being a good leader is not easy, right? Everybody who has a team that is well running would love for it to run just the same all the time because it's easy. But being a good leader is not easy. It's actually way easier to be a toxic leader and to deflect every responsibility. But it doesn't really serve anybody except for a very short-term comfort that they're getting out of it. Because long-term, you're going to land here on my channel. You're going to learn about it and get out. Very important last red flag number 6 is public humiliation that they kind of disguise as if it were feedback. And yes, that has a little bit to do with company culture as well, right? So I would want to see, how is this happening in the group? Is it happening for everybody? Because everybody messes up from time to time, right? We need to remember that. So if you're the only one where it gets pointed out publicly that you did something wrong or because of you something didn't work, that is a red flag. If for everybody else that never happens and the feedback is handled in private. Even worse so, if there are people that are the preferred golden children and they can never do something wrong while other people get punished for even the smallest things, big red flag. Big red flag. So what is bad leadership is gossiping in meetings and a lot of sarcasm in meetings, right? Even talking about other leaders or other departments badly in meetings. It's calling people out in a way that embarrasses them and is not really helpful. Or oh God, passive aggressiveness, where you don't even know, was this now real? Was it sarcasm? Was it passive aggressive behavior? Of course you're confused, right? What does good leadership do? They're very clear and outspoken and neutral in their communication. Sure, you can have a laugh from time to time, but not at the expense of somebody else, and definitely not of somebody that is in the meeting. Good leaders will make sure they protect the dignity and self-respect of their employees. It's not that hard. There should be clear expectations without shame. And if it ever comes to the situation that something needs to be discussed in the open, and it does happen, then it can still be respectful. It doesn't need to be in a way that the person feels dumb afterwards or gets laughed at. That is possible. Don't buy into this kind of, narrative of toxic leaders that they love to do. Is like, oh, nobody can take negative feedback anymore. No, but you need to know how to give feedback. And yeah, nobody likes to receive negative feedback. I certainly don't. And yet you can take it easier and digest it and learn and grow from it when it's done in a respectful manner, keeping dignity intact. And that is the absolute minimum standard for a healthy boss. So that was it. Those were the 6 red flags. So I want to make sure that you use your full discernment also for yourself. As high performers, we sometimes are so good in analyzing and, being discerning about stuff on the outside, while anything that is directed towards us, we take as the full truth. So please stop normalizing toxic communication and red flags just for some short-term comfort of not having to do something. Strong leadership can be direct. It can sometimes be uncomfortable to get negative feedback, but it should never question your self-perception, and it should never manipulate you into thinking you're the only one that is stupid and dumb, you're not good enough, and trigger all of these core wounds that many of us hold, where we think like, I need to prove my worth and I'm only valuable if an authority figure tells me so. Right? If they trigger that over and over again, that's a big red flag. And in order to get the self-respect on the outside, we know that we have to hold it first. So respect yourself enough to make a move and to protect yourself and to get stuff rolling so that you can flourish and blossom in a healthy workplace, just how you're supposed to. All right, down below is a link to my 12-week program if you want to learn exactly that, reconnect with your true self, with your inner wisdom, and navigate through and out of that in a safe and healthy manner. And please make sure to follow and like if you want career success without selling your soul. I am rooting for you. See you in the next one.
Let the truth echo loud. Let it sing through your soul. You're here to build a life, not just survive the grind. Step out from the shadows, release what holds you behind. This toxic boss, a reminder cruel but divine. A mirror reflecting what's been lost and what you can find. You're more than the labels, you're more than the doubt. You're here to flourish, to laugh, to shout. So let the walls fall down, let the past just be a blessing in disguise, birthing possibilities. Oh, you were never meant to shrink, you're meant to soar. Rise up, claim the life you adore. There's more that matters, oh so much more. You can rise in your career and still keep your core. Oh, we walk through the triggers, Let's do this together. Let this journey transcend. I love you. I believe in your light. Together we'll rise.